Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Ashtatari Shatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Ashtatari Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaurabhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Radha Nata Radha Radha Nata Radhe. Jai Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jai Giri Govardhan Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for having me on this Zoom session. We'll start off with some prayers. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Swapadantika. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostate. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanchikalpatarubhescha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavinibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dear devotees, I am by no means qualified to speak on the subject matter because it's a very vast topic, and with your blessings I try to say something today. So let's go ahead. So we'll start off with a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, glorifying the Srimad Bhagavatam to some degree. And as I'm reading the purport, I will try to explain something. So maybe I could just share the screen with you, so you know you don't be lost. So let me just go there. Yeah. Is it on now?
Hare Krishna Mati, not as yet.
What is it? Okay, let's try to. I think now it's on, right? Is it?
Yes, we can see it, Mataji.
Okay. So the verse goes as follows. But before I recite that, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the verse goes as follows. Nidhama kalpataro dhalitam phalam sukhamukad amritam dravasamritam pibate bhagavatam rasa alayam muhur ahurasika bhuvi bhavakaha. Again, so we'll recite it 3 times, right? Nigama kalpataro dhalitam phalam Sukhamukad amritam dravasamitam Pibate bhagavatam rasa alayam Muhur ahurasika bhuvi bhavaka Nigama kalpataro dhalitam phalam Sukhamukad amritam dravasamitam Pibate bhagavatam rasa alayam Muhur ahobhavaka Muhur ahorasika bhuvi bhavaka. So the word for word goes as follows. Nighama, the Vedic literatures. Kalpataro, desired tree. Galitam, fully mature. Phalam, fruit. Sukha, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, the original speaker of the Bhagavatam. Mukhat, from the lips of Amritam, nectar. Drava, semi-solid and soft, and therefore easily swallowable. Samyutam, perfect in all respects. Pibate, to do, which is relishable. Alayam, until liberation, or even in a liberated condition. Muhu, always. Aho, rasika, those who are full in knowledge of mellows. Bhuvi, on the earth. Bhavaka, expert and thoughtful. So the translation is as follows. For expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Purport, by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So, not see my full screen. What is as follows. In the 2 previous slokas, it has been definitely proved that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate literature, which surpasses all other Vedic literatures due to the transcendental qualities. It is transcendental and to all mundane activities and mundane knowledge. In this sloka, it is stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is not only a superior literature, but it is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering this, all this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential, with great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Srimad Bhagavatam. So here Prabhupada is stating that this Srimad Bhagavatam is a ripened fruit of all the Vedic literatures, and he's comparing it to the cream of all Vedic literatures. So in this way, because it is the highest literature, we should actually try to submissively try and hear the Srimad Bhagavatam with rapt attention. So Many people in the past, many great saints have actually listened to the Srimad Bhagavatam with rapt attention and have attained perfection. So we too, as devotees of the ISKCON movement, we can listen to Srila Prabhupada's purports, which are in themselves, Prabhupada described as his ecstasies. So we should listen with rapt attention, no matter who the speaker is, whether qualified or unqualified, but is within the movement. We should try to hear with rapt attention, because whatever the speaker is speaking is none other than what Prabhupada is actually trying to, Prabhupada's purports basically. So his message is coming across, right? So we should try to hear with rapt attention. The Vedas are compared to a desire tree because they contain all this knowledge, all this knowable by man, that they deal with mundane necessities as well as spiritual realizations. The Vedas contain regulative principles of knowledge covering social, political, religious, economic, military, medicinal, chemical, physical, and metaphysical subjects matter, and all that may be necessary to keep the body and soul together. Above and beyond all this, there are specific directions for spiritual realization. Regulative knowledge involves a gradual raising of the living entity to the spiritual platform, and the highest spiritual realization is knowledge that the Supreme Personality of God is the reservoir of all spiritual rasas or tastes. So here, Prabhupada is comparing the Vedic literatures, which is so vast, right? And basically, 98% of the Vedas is dealing with all these subject matters, right? Social, political, religious, economic, military, medicinal. So this is what's contained in the Vedic literatures. And just a small percentage is contained basically of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and glorifying his pastime. And that is the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So we find that Vyasadeva was very despondent, when he was writing, he compiled all the Vedic literatures, the 4 Vedas, the Itihasas, which are pastimes, storylines, the Upanishads like this, but he was not satisfied. So why wasn't he satisfied? Then his spiritual master Narada Muni came to his rescue and told him, you are feeling despondent because you haven't glorified the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He basically spoke about all these subject matters that I listed just now, right? But he didn't glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So in this way, Vyasadeva went into meditation, and that's when he compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is basically the cream of all the Vedic scriptures. It's compared to the ripened fruit as well. So the ripened fruit, you take a mango, when it is green, it may still be used as to make pickle, right? But it is like sort of bitterish, right? And then when spices are added, then it becomes relishable. And then when it's half ripe, it is a bit sourish, right? So, and it can be still used like that. But when it is ripe, fully ripe, it tastes like nectar, right? It is said that the mango is basically the king of all fruits. But here we see that the king of all scriptures is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it can be compared like that, right? To the Vedas. It's a ripened fruit of the Vedas. So the ripened fruit basically becomes more relishable when it is tasted by a parrot. So that will be described just now. Sukadev Goswami is, basically likened to a parrot. And because of his tasting the Bhagavatam, then it becomes relishable for us as well. And even more tasty when Srila Prabhupada is presenting it to us. So, because he's presenting it according to how modern day people think, right? Modern understanding, like that. So let's go to the next paragraph. Every living entity, beginning from Brahma, the firstborn, within the material world, down to the insignificant ant, desires to relish some taste derived from the sense perception. These sense pleasures are technically called rasas. Such rasas are of different varieties. It is in the revealed scriptures, the following 12 varieties of rasas are enumerated. Yeah, so let's go through them, the 12 rasas that's there in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vedic literatures. More specifically, these rasas are very elaborately discussed in the Nectar of Devotion. So the first one being Rudra or Rodra, anger, Adbhuta, Shringara, Hasya, Veera, Daya, Dasya, Sakya, Vayanaka, Vibhatsa, Shanta, and Vatsalya. So let's go through them one by one. We find that Rodra or anger, right? So anger is also one of the rasas that's basically being described in the Nectar of Devotion. An example is given also. Rodra, anger. So this was when Rohini, Mother Rohini, when the two Arjuna trees fell, and when Krishna pulled them down and they fell, and that's when she rebuked Mother Yashoda. She says, "How could you do this? How could you leave your son alone when these two trees are falling down and he's roaming around in the yard?" So she was very angry at that point. So that's the rasa of anger. Although it's in love with Krishna, right? Out of love, she's saying these things, but also a little bit of anger with Mother Yashoda, right? Then the next one is Adbhuta, wonder. So wonder, when Mother Yashoda looked into baby Krishna's mouth, and that's when she was wonderstruck when she saw the whole universe within his mouth. So that's wonder, basically. She was in the rasa of wonder. So these rasas also mix, parental and wonder, like that. They mix also. And this is very elaborately described in the Nectar of Devotion. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Then the next one is Shringara. Shringara is conjugal love. And this is displayed by the gopis of Vrindavan. I won't get into that because we basically, not on that level to discuss the rasa of the devotees in the gopis of Vrindavan. So we'll skip that. But we know what type of relationship they have with Krishna, right? The next one is, the fourth one is hasya or comedy. So basically comedy is, they're also in the Krishna's pastimes, in that when Krishna was lying down, right? And one of the boys said, Krishna, open your mouth. I want to put a nice gulab jamun into your mouth. So Krishna opened his mouth and he closed his eyes, opened his mouth, and then the boys put a flower into his mouth, right? And everybody began to laugh. So this is hasya, comedy. So the next one we go to is Veera or chivalry. So this is displayed by the cowherd boys in Vrindavan, where they want to show off their strength and how powerful they are. So they wrestle with Krishna like this. So this is chivalry. Then daya or mercy, compassion, basically. When Krishna was being coiled up by the coils of Kaliya, you know. So, oh, basically, sorry, I'm mixing it up. It's not that. Daya is compassion. When Krishna was being bound up by Mother Yashoda, then the elderly gopis were looking. They felt this compassion for Krishna, right? This mercy, basically, and Daya, compassion for Krishna. The next one is Dasya, servitorship. And that we find Lord Hanuman. He basically acts as a servant to Lord Ramachandra. Sakya of fraternity, and that is also compared to, one second, this is compared to friendship with Krishna. So basically people, those who are on equal levels with Krishna, right, friends. So we get the cowherd boyfriends of Krishna in the forest of Vrindavan, and basically playing with Krishna like that. The next one is Sakya of fraternity, I said that. The next one is Bhayanaka, which is horror. So when the residents of Vrindavan saw Krishna in the coils of Kaliya serpent, and that's when horror struck them. You know, they were like so horrified just looking at Krishna, and they couldn't do anything about it. Bibhatsa, shock. Shock is also there in the same pastime of Kaliya. They're basically shocked to see Krishna in that condition, being bound up by the coils of Kaliya serpent. And you find that when Mother Yashoda came, she basically fainted when she seen Krishna in that condition, right? The next one is neutrality. Now, neutrality, most of us wonder, like, what is neutrality? And we don't really have the courage to ask, you know, these questions. But when I researched it, I basically came up with that neutrality is like how the four Kumaras have this relationship with Krishna, that they just admire his beauty, and you know, they offer prayers like this. So in this one, it's the example is the four Kumaras. The next one is Vatsalya, parentalhood, and that is displayed by Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, parentalhood. So we'll continue reading. The sum total of all the rasas is called affection or love. Primarily, such signs of love are manifest in adoration, service, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. And when these five are absent, love is present indirectly in anger, wonder, comedy, chivalry, fear, shock, and so on. For example, when a man is in love with a woman, the rasa is called conjugal love. But when such affairs are disturbed, there may be wonder, anger, shock, or even horror. Sometimes love affairs between two persons culminate in ghastly murder scenes, right? Such rasas are displayed between man and between animal and animal. There is no possibility of an exchange of rasa between a man and an animal, or between a man and other species of living beings within the material world. The rasas are exchanged between the same species, but as far as the spirit soul is concerned, they are one qualitatively with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the rasas were originally exchanged between the spiritual living beings and the spiritual whole. That means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual exchange or rasa is fully exhibited in spiritual existence between living beings and the Supreme Lord. So here Prabhupada is telling us that these rasas that I've been describing are actually displayed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities like us, right? And between the same species, between human beings and another human being, all right? Between animal and animal, but it cannot be displayed between human being and an animal. So different species, these rasas do not take place. So the supreme next paragraph, the supreme personality of Godhead is therefore described in the Shruti mantras, Vedic hymns, as the fountainhead of all rasas. When one associates with the Supreme Lord and exchange one's constitutional rasa with the Lord, then the living being is actually happy. So basically, we are living entities who have fallen from grace, and we all have a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In one of these 5 primary rasas, we all have these exchanges with the Supreme Lord. But because we have fallen from grace and we have forgotten our constitutional position and our original relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore and to revive that rasa that we have with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to revive that so that we can go back to the spiritual world and be with Krishna in exchange of these rasas. And that's what Krishna wants. He's basically, he's missing us actually, and he wants us to come back to him more than we want to go back, because we think that this material world is meant for our enjoyment and we want to enjoy here. But actually, it's just meant to give us misery and suffering. Next paragraph. These Shruti mantras indicate that every living being has a constitutional position which is endowed with a particular type of rasa to be exchanged with the personality of Godhead. In the liberated condition only, this primary rasa is experienced in full. In the material existence, the rasa is experienced in a perverted form, which is temporary, and the rasa of the material world are exhibited in the material form of rodra, anger, and so on. Therefore, one who has attained full knowledge of the different rasas, which are the basic principles of activities, can understand the false representations of the original rasas which are reflected in the material world. The learned scholars seek to relish the real rasa in the spiritual form. In the beginning, the desires to become one with the Supreme. Thus, the less intelligent transcendentalists cannot go beyond the perception of becoming one with the spirit whole without knowing the different rasas. So we have some transcendentalists who want to become one with the Supreme, right? And because they do not have this information of the different relationships that we can have with Krishna, so they want to become one with Krishna. But therefore, they need to be educated, right? In this sloka, it is definitely stated that spiritual rasa, which is relished even in the liberated stage, can be experienced in the literatures of the Srimad Bhagavatam due to its being the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge. So just this point about becoming one with the Supreme Lord. When I was younger, say around 12 years of age, and I heard this phrase that we must become one with God. So I was wondering, how do one become one with God? Because God is God, and I'm separate from God. So how can I become one with God? So I was wondering, and first of all, who is God? So I kept having these doubts, and I was always questioning myself as to, and trying to think, because I was reading some of these divine life books and all of that, right? And I was wondering, how can I become one with God? And I was wondering, so if God is just say if God is a person, so if I become one with him, so which part of his body will I fit in? So I was like, because of my childish brain, I was thinking like this. And anyway, it doesn't really make sense to become one with God. So, and therefore I was like I was very confused. And I had a lot of questions, and which I never asked. But Srila Prabhupada facilitated me getting answers to these questions by sending me one of his books via, by a person who is not even a devotee. So anyway, so when I read, and my first book was the Krishna book, and when I read that book, I said, wow, this is God, this is who I want to worship. Like that. So so in this way, sure, but slow but sure, but Krishna has brought me to his lotus feet. So in this sloka, it is definitely stated the spiritual rasas, which are relished, even in the liberated stage, can be experienced in the literature of the Srimad Bhagavatam due to its being the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge. By submissive hearing, this transcendental literature, one can attain the full pleasure of the heart's desire. But one must be very careful to hear the message from the right source. Srimad Bhagavatam is exactly received from the right source. It was brought by Narad Muni from the spiritual world and given to his disciple, Sri Vyasadeva. The latter, in turn, delivered the message to his son, Srila Sukadeva Goswami. So this is how this knowledge is coming down in the line of parampara, right? From spiritual master to disciple to spiritual master to disciple, like this. And Srila Sukadeva Goswami delivered the message to Maharaj Parikshit just 7 days before the king's death. Srila Sukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul in his very birth. From his very birth, he was liberated even in the womb of his mother, and he did not undergo any sort of spiritual training after his birth. At birth, no one is qualified, neither in the mundane nor in any sort of spiritual, in the spiritual sense, mundane and spiritual sense. But Srila Sukadeva Goswami, due to his being the perfectly liberated soul, did not have to undergo the evolutionary process for spiritual, right? Did not have to go the evolutionary process of spiritual realization. Yet, despite his being completely liberated person situated in the transcendental position above the three modes of material nature, he was attracted to this transcendental rasa of the Supreme Personality Godhead, who is adored by liberated souls who sing the Vedic hymns. The Supreme Lord's pastimes are more attractive to liberated souls than to mundane people. He is of the necessity not impersonal, because it is only possible to carry on transcendental rasa with a person. So we see here that Sukadeva Goswami is not an ordinary person, because he is liberated from from birth, basically. Because when he was within the womb of his mother, Srila Vyasadeva was speaking Bhagavatam, and he heard everything. And he did not want to even come out of her womb. Can you imagine? He stayed there for 16 years. He did not want to come out. And eventually, after 16 years, when he did, come out of the womb, he ran for it. He did not want to get caught up in household life. So he just went away and and Srila Vyasadeva like ran after him, calling out, for him to come back, but he did not turn around. He just went away. So we see he did not want to get caught up in household affairs because he knows that being caught up in household life, it's compared to a dark well. So therefore he like just vanished. He didn't want to be around. But we see, from Srila Prabhupada's teachings that even in household life, one can become a perfect devotee and also can attain the lotus feet of Krishna in the spiritual world, go back to the spiritual world, just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. This is how important Srimad Bhagavatam is, that when one hears Srimad Bhagavatam, one gives up all his attachment to this material world and goes back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even, after this lifetime. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are narrated, and the narration is systematically depicted by Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Thus, the subject matter is appealing to all classes of persons, including those who seek liberation and those who seek to become one with the Supreme Whole. Right? So it's this message is for everyone. It's not only for devotees, it's for devotees and anyone else as well. Those who want to actually break their bonds of this material world, right, will actually relish Srimad Bhagavatam. In Sanskrit, the parrot is known as sukha. When a ripened fruit is cut by the red beaks of such birds, its sweet flavor is enhanced. The Vedic fruit, which is mature and ripe in knowledge, is spoken through the lips of Srila Sukadeva Goswami, which is compared to the parrot for the ability to recite Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from his learned father. But let me read that again. Who is compared to a parrot not for his ability to recite the Bhagavatam as he heard it from his learned father, but for his ability to present the work in a manner that would appeal to all classes of men. Subject matter. So basically, I was just thinking that Sukadeva Goswami, he, pibate, it means to drink, right? To drink this, the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. How are we supposed to drink the message of this great literature? Through our ears. We need to drink this juice, nectarian juice, this rasa, through our ears. Subject matter is so presented through the lips of Srila Sukadeva Goswami that any sincere listener that hears submissively can at once relish transcendental tastes and are distinct from the perverted taste of the material world. The ripened fruit is not dropped all of a sudden from the highest planet, Krishna Loka. Rather, it has come down slowly through the chain of disciplic succession, without change or disturbances. Foolish people who are, I'm struggling to read because this the screen is blocking. So I'm just like getting a little bit that I'm, that I can see here. So let's see. Foolish people who are not in the transcendental disciplic succession commit great blunders by trying to understand the highest transcendental rasa as the rasa dance without following the footsteps of Sukadeva Goswami, who presents the fruit very carefully by stages of transcendental realization. One should be intelligent enough to know the position of the Srimad Bhagavatam by considering personalities like Sukadeva Goswami, who deals with the subject so carefully. So we see here that Prabhupada, he compares Sukadeva Goswami to bring this fruit so carefully to us, basically, right, the devotees. But we find there are professional reciters who recite Srimad Bhagavatam just to make a living. And because there's an exchange of money, and they also don't present Srimad Bhagavatam as it is, as Srila Prabhupada is presenting it with bhakti, because they just want to make some, it's for a fruit of end, basically. And they delve right into the Rasa Leela, the Rasa dance. Whereas Sukadeva Goswami, he brings us right from the lower stages going up. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is compared to the lotus feet of Krishna, the first stages, right, to Krishna's body. The first 3 cantos are compared to the lotus feet of Krishna, and going up. The 10th canto is compared to the smiling face of Krishna. So in this way, we need to read Srimad Bhagavatam and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, but from canto 1 upward, right? Canto by canto, until we come to the smiling face of Krishna, the 10th canto. But we find that Srila Prabhupada has given us Krishna book, which is the summary of the 10th canto. That was because, he did not know how much time he had left. So at least, he gave us Krishna book so we can understand who Krishna is, and our relationship, and how can we attain our relationship with him, and listen to the pastimes of Krishna. He gave us the opportunity to hear about the pastimes of Krishna. So just actually this morning, just today, His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami was speaking, and he was saying that actually when Srila Prabhupada in his last stages, he was compiling Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, and he went up to chapter 13. And within those purports of chapter 13, you will find that, he mentions Durban, South Africa as well in one of the verses there. And he basically, you will see how astute and how profound this knowledge Srila Prabhupada, although he was in his last stages, how profound knowledge he was imparting to us just by, reciting in the dictaphone these purports of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto. So we should be very grateful to Srila Prabhupada for this. So let's continue reading. A professional man who makes business out of reciting Bhagavatam illegally is certainly not a Goswami, a representative of Sukadeva Goswami. Such a man's business is only to earn his livelihood. Therefore, one should refrain from hearing the lectures of such professional men. Such men usually go to the most confidential part of the literature without undergoing the gradual process of understanding this grave subject. They usually plunge into the subject matter of the rasa dance, which is misunderstood by the foolish class of men. Some of them take into the subject matter of the rasa dance, some of them take this to be immoral, while others try to cover it up by their own stupid interpretations. They have no desire to follow in the footsteps of Srila Sukadeva Goswami. So we see here that Prabhupada is again emphasizing that we should not listen to these professional reciters. So basically continue with this, although the purport is ended, but I want to continue with the recitation of this verse. So we find that there are other verses also in the Srimad Bhagavatam that's actually, glorifying the Bhagavatam. And we'll go through them now. So the other one is Krishna Swadharma Bhagate Dharma Jana Dvisaha Kalona Sadisham Esha Purnako Dunaditaha. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun and has arisen after the departure of the Lord to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dark denseness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So in the purport of that verse, Prabhupada says that people in Kali Yuga are a royal edition of animals because they only engage in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So this is what animals do. They eat, mate, they don't have higher intelligence. And how do you distinguish a human being from an animal? It's because he has higher intelligence and he inquires as to who I am, who he is, what his business here in this material world is, and how he can get out of this cycle of this imprisonment of this material world. So in this way, the human being only has higher intelligence and he can question like this. So his Prabhupada says in the purport that actually they are blind because they cannot see beyond the mind and the senses. And they are so proud of the so-called advancement, right, of material science and material prosperity, that they risk their lives of becoming dogs and hogs because they have lost the sight of the aim of life. So imagine how Prabhupada is, he's being straightforward, and he's saying it as it is, that this material world, people are very proud of their knowledge, but actually in the next life, they're going to become hogs and dogs, basically, right? Animals, because they live like animals. They're not questioning, about the higher principles of life. So we find that in this way, they become dogs, hogs, asses, and camels. That's another verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Prabhupada talks about, right? Men who are like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, they glorify those men who are just the same, basically, right? So, yeah, then we go on to another verse. Nasta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavati sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtaki. So, I wanted to share this screen as well with you. So how much time do I have? Okay, we're running out of time. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just comment on this verse, right, without sharing the screen. So we won't go through the whole purport there, but I'll try to say something on this verse. So basically, this verse is speaking about Nasa Prayeshu Bhadreshu, that basically all one's material contamination will be destroyed from the heart if one simply hears the glories of the Bhagavatam, right? So I'm just paraphrasing. Then another verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which glorifies Anartha Pashamam Shakshad Bhakti Yoga Adakshaja Lokashanta Vidvams Chakra Savita Samhitam. This is 176. You can go and look it up and read the purport actually. And the translation of this verse is, stay tuned. The material miseries of the living entities, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this. Therefore, Srila Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. So just look at the verse, it's material miseries that the living entity goes through is superfluous to him. That means that, he cannot basically, these miseries what the living entity goes through, he cannot handle it, right? It's superfluous. It's, it's so intense. Therefore, Srila Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature so we can get out of these miseries. And you'll find that in the nectar of devotion, one of the first things that comes our way is that this Klesh Agni is removed. Klesh Agni is the miseries of this material world. When one takes up to the process of devotional service, then the one gets rid of Klesh Agni, the miseries of this material world. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the material affection brings about miseries, material affection for our assets, right? House, car, bank balance, also family members, spouse, children, like this. It brings about misery in this material world. Srimad Bhagavatam clearly says how one can mitigate these affections and attachments through the process of devotional service. So, the other term we can use is yukta vairagya, which is dovetailing all our propensities in the service of Krishna. So whatever we have in our possession, we can use it in the service of Krishna. And in this way, follow the 9 processes of devotional service and try to get out of this material world. So Srimad Bhagavatam is giving us that chance to leave this material world and go back home, back to Godhead. So dear devotees, I will stop here now. I think I've gone over time. And if you have anything you'd like to contribute or questions or whatever, you can kindly do so now. Hare Krishna. If no one has any questions, then we'll just do a short kirtan and we can stop. So, okay, let me share the screen with you as well. Hare Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Hare Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Srimad Sudam. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavat Gita Shri Rup Shri Sanatan Bhata Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Dasa Raghunath Echai Gusai Kori Charnavinda Jaha hoite Vignanash Avista Puran Echai Gosai Char Mohitaratas Tasa Bhara Padmarenu Mura Panchagras Sadare Charana Sava Bhakti Sarya Janama Janama Hoye Abhilas Echai Gosai Jabha Brajavrin Shwela Bhas Radha Krishna Nitya Nila Torilo Prakash Ananda Bola Hari Raja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Padamajiyaman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pada Padma Koriyas Nama Sankirtana Koha Narottama Das Hariharaya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. I'd just like to read the translation for the song. Hari, obeisances to Lord Hari unto Krishna and Yadavaya. Obeisances of the Yadavas, Madhavaya Keshavaya. Gopal Govindaram, O Vanquisher of Madhu, Giridhari, Lord of the Gopis, Bewilderer of Cupid. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda, Sri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava, Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. All glories to Sri Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami. I bow down to the feet of the 6 Goswamis. By their grace, our obstacles can be destroyed and all our desires are fulfilled. I am the servant of these 6 Goswamis. The dust of their lotus feet is my 5-fold subsistence. To be a servant of their lotus feet and to reside in the company of the devotees, this is my aspiration, birth after birth. When the 6 Goswamis lived in Vraja, they revealed the eternal pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna. In ecstasy, sing the name of Lord Hari and worship Vrindavan, joyfully fixing your mind upon the lotus feet of the pure devotees. The lotus feet of my Guru and the Vaishnavas are my aspiration. Narottam Das thus sings Hari Nam Sankirtan. So dear devotees, this is the translation of the song entitled Nama Sankirtan. So thank you for giving me this opportunity of speaking. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpa tarubhescha kripa sindhivya Patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.